Are you ready to be connected? You're listening to the Insured Connection podcast by Pica Group, a pro assurance company, where we provide expert advice for your practice when you need it most. We connect you with industry leaders to discuss timely topics so you can listen, learn, and get back to caring for your patients. Now, let's connect.
Welcome, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Adrianne Ross. Welcome to the Insured Connection. Thank you so much for joining us. And we have a special treat for you. And I know we've really brought on many special guests. You know, we try to go behind the scenes and show you what happens at ProAssurance, what happens at PICA, but one thing that we don't always get the chance to do is show you kind of where we've come from some of the leaders in the profession truly. And so I'm honored to be able to have Dr. Alan Banks as well as Dr. Luke Cicchinelli, and we're just going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek into Dr. Banks and his life and his legacy of as he's approaching retirement. So Dr. Banks, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure, Adrianne, and what a wonderful introduction. Thank you. And so, yes, I'm here, and it's a pleasure to be here, and especially with the two of you. And maybe we just need to do it over dinner sometime too, you know?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy with that.
Let me say as well, thank you, Alan, for coming on, and Adrian for hosting. And whether Alan gets to this or not, Alan was our residency director back at the Podiatry Institute. So it's a lot of years of mentoring for myself personally and all my colleagues up until he stepped away from that role. And then a great friend. So Alan, thanks for coming on. We know you're a humble guy, and you'll probably struggle to explain all you've done, but it's great for the profession to know, and especially for PICA, because you've been integral to defending our colleagues, podiatrists, podiatric physicians and surgeons, insureds, whatever we want to call them, for many, 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 many years, which I'm sure you will probably relate, sort of inherited that along with your mentors and the legacy that has come before as well. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So, Dr. Banks, I will say, I can't say, I don't think I know anyone in the profession who doesn't know the name Dr. Alan Banks. And one of the reasons why is, for one, because you've published so much, whether in textbooks or in articles. But again, I mean, I sit on the residency committee for Emory, and you've been involved with the residents, directly and indirectly for so many years. So I wanted just to ask you, over your career, what are some of the things that you have seen change, within the field of podiatry?
Wow, it's been incredible. When you talk about residency, the biggest change is we have residency places for everyone now. So, when I graduated from podiatry school, there was a shortage of residencies, and it was such a tragedy. And so, fortunately, that changed over time. As more and more people were trained, then obviously that availed themselves to becoming trainers themselves, and so ultimately we caught up, and so that was one of the huge advances for our profession. Number two, we can obtain hospital privileges anywhere we want now. And I would tell you, it didn't used to be that way. I remember when in Atlanta, we could only get privileges at 3 hospitals, small hospitals, many times private hospitals. It was that way all over. Now you can walk into any hospital and you can get privileges. Not only is a lot of the antagonism gone, but we have colleagues now who are working in orthopedic groups, for goodness sakes. And it's been that way for years now. So those are just probably some of the most obvious changes that I've seen that were so stark, okay, compared to when we started. The acceptance of the profession in the medical community, it is so far and above what it was. And so the profession has truly advanced, and it's been great to see, and especially great that the younger folks can take advantage of that.
So it's funny, I remember talking to, and I don't know if you remember this, we were doing a lab at the PI, and you came up to me and you said, wow, don't you get excited about this kind of stuff? And I'm thinking, you've seen probably, I mean, more than what anybody in here has ever seen. And you were so just ecstatic about it. And I remember one of the students coming up to me and saying, wow, Dr. Banks is really into this. We were doing a dissection for a total ankle, and you were so excited. And so I guess that leads me to one of my questions. How did you keep reinvigorating yourself, when you've been a teacher and a mentor in it for so long?
Well, number one, you work with incredible people.
Mhm.
It's easy to be motivated when you work with the people who've been through our program.
Mhm.
It's exhilarating to do that, to go to work and work with the residents that we've had come through this program. My goodness, it's been absolutely the best of all scenarios that you could imagine. Too, the capacity to work with other similarly minded people who compose, kind of the fabric of the practice here in Atlanta, McGlamory, Rook, and on and on. And so uh, there is, well, when you enjoy what you do, it makes it easier. But being around extremely gifted people of similar minds is it's contagious, and yeah, it's a great thing.
Like what you're hearing? Go ahead and subscribe so you never miss an episode again. Now, let's continue to connect on today's topic.
Mhm. Dr. Cicchinelli mentioned, mentors. What are your thoughts on that? Who has mentored you? How did you become what you
Ah,
are?
you know, well, first of all, I would say even in podiatry school, obviously the people who you wanted to emulate,
Mm.
these were the people. So, obviously Don Green was our surgery department chairman. And, I think any serious student wanted to be Don Green at some point in their career. Um, I was able to spend time with Jim Ganley.
Mhm.
Ganley was just this incredible thinker, and so spending a day with him was just like talking shop with somebody whose mind was on a different level. And so it was wonderful. And then Alan Whitney always argued at PCPM that the forefoot controlled the rear foot. Okay. I- it wasn't root biomechanics, it was forefoot biomechanics. He's right. It's funny because I saw Doug Ritchie give this lecture a few years ago on the twisted plate,
Yeah.
foot function. And when he got finished, I walked over and I said, Doug, what you just said in that lecture basically is that the forefoot controls the rear foot, right? And he thinks for a minute and he goes, yeah. I said, did you ever know Alan Whitney? And he goes, well, I heard of him. And I said, well, I just want you to know you made Alan Whitney a very happy man. He, now, he's up there. He's happy because somebody's admitted it now. The forefoot controls the rear foot. And so, but obviously after podiatry school training where I did, certainly McGlamory and John Rook, I think were our great mentors. And I went into practice with them right after residency. So that was an incredible experience because I got to continue to learn from them. And I also learned how they interacted with patients. And
Mm.
um, this was in the time before electronic records, and I would be in the office on certain days with McGlamory, and he used to wait till the end of the day to return all his phone calls. Okay, so I would be done with patients because I wasn't busy, obviously, and I would go and just sit in his office and listen to him return calls to patients or other doctors, and just how he communicated things to other people was really a gift for me to be able to hear that. And I still use a lot of those techniques even today. So yeah,
Mm.
it was a wonderful time uh, to be in school and to be trained by these people.
Now, Alan, I'm going to jump in there because he may have slipped a little bit because last time I called him, he said, now, Luke, did you call me or did I call you? So the and he'd probably get a kick out of that as well. So we can share that on the video here. Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. Great role models, right? I mean, people you wanted to be like. And I know that you're interviewing Alan, but he mentioned Don Green. So when I was in school, at the same school, Don Green had moved back to California, right? But then we had the role models of Kieran Mann. I mean, speaking specifically to Atlanta, where Alan is, and the Podiatry Institute and so forth, right? We had Kieran Mann, Mike Downey, Scott Millay from that same institution who were our surgical faculty, and then other wonderful surgical faculty as well, Harold Vogler, Gary Bauer, John Walter, uh, Dr. Martin. So anyway, it's great to have people to look up to and feel like, I would love to have that person treat me, right? And then, of course, in Atlanta, you had a whole breadth of other faculty and attendings that had come through the Podiatry Institute. So,
Yeah, I think yeah, just that idea of mentorship, we've talked a lot about that and how powerful it is. And, I've had the pleasure of sitting on a committee with you, Dr. Banks, and it's interesting. It's always funny to me, being a young attending. I think it was a resident or a student or an incoming resident that told me one time, he said, I scrubbed a case with Dr. Banks. And I'm like, how do you feel? And he told me, he said, I was scared out of my mind. I said, okay, but
scary guy.
true story. I won't reveal who it was, but he said I was scared out of my mind. And I said, but how did you feel after the case? And his response was, I felt like he didn't get tired of teaching me, that I felt honored that he would actually share his wisdom with me. And the same thing just kept happening with students and residents, and there's so many of them that have come through. So you've been a mentor for so long. How has that changed you? You being a mentor to so many generations.
Well, it's a privilege. Like I say, to be able to work with some of the men and women who've been through gear has just been absolutely incredible. And uh, to me, the one of the greatest joys is seeing how they mature and become successful after they leave. I mean, it's just awesome. You go to meetings and you catch up with them and you see what they're doing, and they're all doing well and just so many interesting things. And it is just, yeah, it's an incredible reward. Yeah,
Mhm.
it really is. It is that. And so yeah, I mean, I just hope that I can in some way repay, what I was able to receive. And again, remember, I came through residencies when we didn't have residency programs for everybody. And, one of the things that was inculcated in us as residents during our time here was, your job is to go out and educate your colleagues.
And
If you think your job is over when you leave after your third year, you're seriously wrong. Okay, your job is just beginning. Okay, it's another phase, and it was our obligation. This is the only way we could ever, in any way, hope to repay the people who trained us was to
Mhm.
carry that on. And so that's just it was like I say, it was inculcated into us, and it's been a great joy to have been a part of that.
So that sounds like a pearl that you're giving to some of the younger generations. What would be some other pearls that you're giving?
Oh wow. I would say find a mentor. Uh,
Mhm.
when you graduate and you finish residency or fellowship, I mean, you have good surgical skills, you have a certain foundation of knowledge, but you're going to be missing a lot of that clinical component, communication with patients. Like when I was sitting in McGlamry's office, just listening to him make those phone calls. How do you explain to a patient their complication? Because we're all going to have them. That's one of the hardest things to do. And so I would say find a colleague, and they don't necessarily have to be older. I mean, one of the guys who I was close friends with was Tom Smith, and Tom was 5 years my senior, and he'd done the program before me. But we talked 2 to 3 times a week about, hey, what do you think about this case or that case, or hey, I had this one come in today, and so there was always that source of respect that you respected this person's opinion. You knew they would be honest with you. They would tell you if you were foolish or whether you were off base with what you were thinking, or whether it was a great idea. And I think everyone, especially our younger practitioners, need to find that person. And it doesn't have to be someone who's been in practice for 30 years, but just somebody who has been around the block a little bit longer, who has a little bit, you know, wider bit of experience, and so that they don't get in trouble.
Mm.
Okay, because and it's interesting because I've heard this conversation once before with one of our vascular surgeons, and he was saying, when I got done with fellowship, I thought I was ready to go, and he said, "Thank God, one of my partners scrubbed all my cases with me for the first year." He said it was great because he said there was always a little something that came up, and I remember Jack Schuberth talking about when he first started doing ankle implants. Now, if there was ever someone qualified to do an ankle implant, it's Jack Schuberth. And what he told me was for the first 25 cases, he had the Kaiser implant surgeon scrub with him. Dude had never seen a single ankle implant, but he knew hip implant, shoulder, whatever. So, and Jack said there were about 5 of those cases where that person's experience and knowledge was very valuable in salvaging a problem that developed intraoperatively. So, whether we're new in practice or whether we're new to a particular technique, okay, that collaboration is maybe you could say mentorship, you could call it collaboration. I'm so lucky. John Rook is my partner. I want to collaborate with somebody. I walk down the hall. It's very easy for me, and not everybody has that luxury. So I just say, find somebody, and they don't have to be in your own community or your own town. I talk with a number of my colleagues with frequency in all different parts of the United States, and I'll ring them up. Maybe when I want a different opinion other than Rook's opinion. So I think all of us value that, and I think it's been very helpful for me in my practice.
Want to receive a monthly newsletter with topics from the Insured Connection? Head over to picagroup.com/Insured Connection and join our email list to have it delivered right to your inbox.
I like what you bring up. I actually haven't heard too many people talk about, mentorship and just even the power of kind of collaboration. And you can hear it in your tone, the humility that comes with that, Jack Schuberth or you or Rook would say, hey, I'd like to hear what someone else has to say. I don't think I have all the answers. That I think that's good for all of us, the younger generations included, to hear, just to keep that humility. You're coming up here on retirement. There is something that I do want to. Oh, yes, Dr. Cicchinelli, go ahead.
Could I just add one thing in there because I see it in education as well, and I just want to make it a complementary to what Alan just said. And I think the key is to look for mentors that have a good character ethic and sincerity behind their opinions, because we live in a society of the personality ethic trumping the character ethic. And and social media and chat rooms, and where a lot of people go to get an opinion or another opinion, there's an awful lot of sort of self-affirmation or just sort of making people feel good. And that's not what you need in mentors. People should be very selective in the mentors that they seek their opinion. You want someone who's part of your core, who will tell you the way they see it, or they'll say, I don't see it that way. I wouldn't do it this way. I think you want to reconsider. You want real character there. It's so important because you can ask opinions from others thinking they're being a mentor, and they're just sort of, oh yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. That sounds fine. But that's not what Alan's talking about. And it's really there's a big differential there in the quality of the mentor.
Yeah, you want somebody who's going to pose questions to you when you deliver the concern you have. Okay, well, what do you think? Or what were you thinking about doing? Well, are you sure that would work? I mean, you want those kind of questions. Why would you do that as opposed to this? Or, don't you think maybe this is the person maybe who's not ready for surgery yet? I mean, that's what you want. Okay. You don't want somebody who's just going to agree with everything you say. Otherwise, you're just talking to yourself.
I'll give you a little anecdote real quick, without a lot of details behind it. When I called Alan myself about 20 years ago with a complication, and we talked about it, I was looking at him as a mentor, as he has been all these years. And yeah, I don't know if you remember this, Hubby, you said, well, you listened to me. We started to sort of work through the case and the complications. And you said, all right, well, let's see here. There's plenty of gravy to pour over this burnt chicken. And let's go ahead and, let's go ahead and sort of think about it piece by piece, right? So that's what you want. You want someone who's going to help you analyze the case, as well as people need a shoulder to lean on as well in a mentor.
And that's it for this week's episode. But let's continue connecting. If you're enjoying the Insured Connection, don't forget to leave a review on your streaming platform and subscribe now so you can connect with us each time we post a new episode. To stay connected with us throughout the week and to tell us topics we should discuss on future episodes, go to picagroup.com/insuredconnection.